welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be tackling some things on my mending pile. If you're new here, hi, I'm Olga and I make sewing content that is usually vintage inspired and sometimes a little bit nerdy. So the first thing that I'm going to be tackling is this dress right here. And this dress I made probably like 2 years ago. It was one of the first times that I was working with this viscose chenille and I didn't realize how much it was going to drop. So I hemmed it really quickly, and I wore it for the reveal. And when I went back to wear it, the hem was super uneven. The hem had dropped a bunch, obviously, over the next few days or whatever it was. Want to hem it because it's such a pretty dress. I think it fits me really well and I really want to wear it. So we're going to be fixing the hem today.
Okay, so the first thing I did to tackle the hem was to put the dress on my dress form. I then sat on the floor and used my measuring tape to find out how far from the floor the shortest point of the hem was. I actually decided to then go a little shorter because this dress was quite long to begin with, and I think a shorter hem would make it more wearable and a bit more flattering on me. When I had the measurement, I then went around the whole dress and marked the same height from the floor with a pin. Now this dress has a lot of skirt, like a lot, so this took a good while. My thoughts when I started mending this dress ranged from, wow, I can't believe it took me this long to shorten this hem, this isn't so bad, to, oh, I see, that's why it took me so long to get around to it. I actually contemplated giving up, but I thought that I was invested now, so I might as well just get on with it. So the reason it took me so long to get around to doing this was that every time I did think of hemming this dress, I would realize that it is a lot of skirt, and if that wasn't bad enough, this dress is lined, which means I have to hem the skirt twice. Anyway, I just marked out the height I wanted on the main fabric, and I even got a little visitor while I did this. I think he was wondering what I was doing on the floor and why he couldn't lay down on his designated floor spot in the sewing room. Because yes, he usually spends his days between sunbathing on the balcony and cooling off on the floor of the sewing room, and he obviously needs that space to be cleared, so I was being very inconsiderate. But he is a good boy, so he let this one slide and found somewhere else to chill while I continued marking the height of the hem. Once I had my hem marked out, I moved the dress over to my desk and started chopping off the excess fabric along the pins. As I was cutting, I was actually cutting both the main and the lining fabric at the same height. This also took a while, mostly because I had to constantly rearrange the dress on the desk so that it was actually cutting both fabrics at the same height. When I got almost to the end, I realized I could have just cut the dress on the dress form and it would have been way easier, but I guess I'll take that lesson for the next hem I do. I settled on a 2 centimeter seam allowance on the dress, so I actually need to hem the lining a bit shorter than that. Once I had that math figured out, I clipped the lining as close to the facings as possible and I started pinning up the lining hem. I did a basic hem folded up twice. I first pinned up the hem the full amount, and then I went back and folded the raw edges in and pinned that in place. And of course, then I stop stitched the lining hem in place. With that done, I flipped the facings to the outside and pinned them so I could stitch them in at the new hem allowance. Then I trimmed just the facings and a little corner off the hem, but I also trimmed the seam of the front to reduce bulk in the new hem. And now, with the facings still turned to the outside, I started pinning up the hem of the dress. I did the exact same thing as I did for the lining, folded up the total hem allowance, pinned, then folded in the raw edges and pinned. And then I stitched that whole hem again. Do not let the cute sped up footage fool you. This whole thing took me over 2 hours. But here is what the hem looks like now. I think it was definitely worth the time, and I'm sure I'll get tons of wear out of this dress.
There's 2 more things that I want to tackle today. One of them is these trousers. They belong to my partner, and the hook and bar closure is like disintegrating, I guess. It was embedded in the fabric and it started the fabric started fraying a bit and it just got pulled out. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and fix that. Give these trousers a few more years of life.
So the first order of business for these trousers was to get the old hook out. I tried with scissors first, but it was very strong. So I ended up having to get my pliers out, and with some coaxing, I did get it out. I could have cut the fabric, but the hook was embedded in the fabric, as I said, and it was still stuck to some of the threads, and I wasn't sure if I snipped them, how much damage that would do to the waistband, and I am trying to keep the patching up to a minimum here. here. Anyway, once that was out, I got my needle and thread and stitched up the hole in the fabric by hand. I'm using doubled up thread for the extra strength and trying to make my stitches as invisible as possible while still patching up the hole, which, let me tell you, was a fine line to walk. I did my best, and while they are visible if you're up close, he wears these with a belt, so it's not really a big deal. I then got out a new hook from my stash and stitched that down by hand as well. Luckily, it fit with the old bar perfectly, so I didn't have to replace that. All in all, this was a really quick fix, and I am a bit embarrassed about how long these trousers were sitting in the pile, considering how little time it actually took to fix them, but hey, they're done now.
The last thing we're going to tackle is this skirt, which I made probably 5 years ago. It's very old, but I don't wear it that much because the waist is a bit too big on me now. And also I realized today when I was trying it on that the hem is also really uneven. We're gonna go ahead and take in the waist and also level out the hem.
I'm tackling the waist first, and because the skirt's waistband doesn't have side seams, I thought the best way to do this would be to unpick the zipper at the back, trim the excess, and then reattach the zipper, so that's what I'm gonna be doing. It's only a couple of centimeters on each side, but it definitely makes a difference. I tried to be very careful with the unpicking so I could reuse the same zipper. I unpicked a bit of the waistband on the inside to allow me to do all of this, but not so far back that it would be a ton of sewing to do later. And this was one of my first big projects that I was super proud of, and still the stitching is so wonky and only some of the seams are finished. It's a bit of a mess on the inside by my standards of 2024, but I do think this is such a cute piece. And bonus fun fact, I made it from a lightweight upholstery fabric that I inherited from my grandmother. It used to be a bed covering at her house. And look at that, a little treat delivery. Once I had my little ice cream and I had the zipper out, I moved on to marking out the new stitching line. It's basically 2 centimeters in on each side of the waistband, and then I flared it out from there into the skirt. I wanted to avoid harsh angles while still keeping most of the fullness of the skirt, and honestly, I didn't want to have more seams to do than was strictly necessary. With my new stitching line in place, I trimmed the excess fabric, leaving myself about a centimeter of seam allowance. Then I stitched the zipper back in. I did one side first, then closed the zipper, marked the waistline on it so I could make sure it matched perfectly on the other side, and then I stitched the other side of the zipper in. I used my pinking shears to clean up the raw edges a little bit and closed the back seam back up. And then I stitched the waistband facings back down by hand, as I always do. For the hem, I repeated the same process you already saw me do in this video, but without a lining layer. Hung it on the dress form, marked the new height, this time trimming the fabric on the dress form, and I saw this little fabric peel forming, which was fun. Then I pinned up the new hem, again folding it up twice, top stitched it in place, and voila! Here is the finished skirt, much more even and a much better fit on the waist.
Okay, please excuse my hair if it looks wild, but I've changed so many times today to film this video. I don't like changing. That's one of the reasons why I never enjoyed like going clothes shopping, was because I didn't like having to try things on and like going changing rooms and stuff, and having to like put clothes on and take them off like in very quick succession. I don't like it. Let's have a little wrap up about this mending video. God, my brain is water. Not water, soup. I'm really happy with all of the things that I fixed. The trousers, obviously, I don't get to try on. The skirt, after I pressed it, it looked a lot better. Not as uneven as it did before, but it definitely was uneven. And the waist fits so much better. Like, I could never wear this skirt without a belt before. And now I'm totally wearing it without a belt right now, and it looks fine, and it feels a lot more comfortable. But yeah, I'm excited that I am gonna now get more wear out of these things that I already had. And I hope I inspired you to do a little bit of mending, a little bit of care for your clothes. I think that's everything for me for today. If you enjoyed this video and you would like more content from me, make sure you're subscribed because I put out new videos every Friday. And you can also follow me on TikTok or Instagram. I post on there every day. So I guess I'll see you next week. But until then, thanks for watching and happy sewing.